Babes in Spyland. How now, sad cow. Episode 6. What was that? T-Ruffle asked in alarm. Stay here. Agent Amphibian Queen drew her weapon and bolted in the direction Bunnynose had gone. Of course, T-Ruffle did not comply. Neither did CB. They both followed her, T-Ruffle asking absurd questions about the sound, and CB hot on her heels saying nothing. Where are you? Amphibian Queen asked into her phone. Southwest corner, Bunnynose's voice cut off as another shot ripped through the air. Amphibian Queen heard the noise in surround sound and tossed her phone in her pocket so she had a free hand. The hall ended in a set of swinging double doors that hadn't quite yet come to rest. Each housed a window, and Amphibian Queen took a second to look through one of them. Beyond lay a warehouse filled to capacity, side to side and top to bottom, with large stainless steel vats, long tubes, moving pumps, random tables, wiggling hoses, and shiny toggle switches. Conveyor belts stretched between machines, connecting everything like a giant spider's web. You cannot go in there, T-Ruffle stammered, trying to keep some semblance of control over the situation. If anything or anyone touches the milk, it will be ruined. Agent Amphibian Queen ignored his protests and asked, Why is someone shooting at my partner? More shots rang out, and she jerked her head away from the window. Muzzle flashes came from two directions, her far left and straight ahead. Bunnynose's muffled voice sounded from Amphibian Queen's pocket. Tell those guys in armor not to kill me. T-Ruffle squeezed up next to Amphibian Queen and pointed. He cannot be there. She followed the line of his finger and found a man running toward the far corner, Bunnynose not far behind. Who is he? CB asked. Doesn't matter, Amphibian Queen said. He just shot at an agent. She pointed at T-Ruffle. Tell your goons to quit shooting at my partner. She ignored the man's continued sputtering and charged into the warehouse. Bunnynose halted and aimed at the running man. Stop right there, she bellowed. The man turned around and fired. Bunnynose dove behind a set of stairs, avoiding the bullet. Get him, T-Ruffle squealed. All semblance of calm or collected gone like a little girl opening a princess dress on Christmas Day. He's trying to sabotage the milk! So Social hadn't been paranoid after all? Amphibian Queen didn't quite believe it. Realizing that T-Ruffle wasn't going to communicate to the goons, she took a deep breath and yelled, Federal agent, do not shoot her. Amphibian Queen could see Spike and his minions moving toward her partner. The perpetrator grabbed a ladder that led to a catwalk. Nearby sat a large vat with a turning arm. A stream of white milk poured from a spigot above, splashing into the vat like a waterfall. Quick as a cat, Bunnynose darted up behind her quarry, appearing beside him before he even knew she was coming. One swat got the gun out of his hand, and, as the maneuver kept going, he found his arm locked up and his face cascading toward the metal catwalk at high speed. Bunnynose had that guy in the bag. Amphibian Queen still had the other half of the warehouse to run across before she would get to them. She looked down to avoid getting tangled in a mess of power cables. Wouldn't Ocean have a field day with that safety hazard? And by the time her eyes once again landed on the intruder, she saw him standing up, trying to grab a dodging Bunnynose. How'd he gotten out of that move? Amphibian Queen had tried 1,000 times and had never managed it. No one ever escaped Bunnynose's vice-like arm bars. Hold it, Amphibian Queen shouted, aiming as she ran. She could probably hit the guy, even while moving, but wasn't sure what was behind him. The last thing she needed today was for her to ruin the milk. The man's eyes flickered in her direction, and Bunnynose used the momentary distraction to move in, fists flying. He should have gone down under the assault, but instead of her strikes meeting the guy's face, all Bunnynose got was empty air. After a few swings, the man sidestepped and grabbed her leading arm, trying to jerk her off balance. But Bunnynose knew her stuff, and she redirected his efforts, and he slammed hard against the railing. Amphibian Queen spotted a set of stairs that would get her to Bunnynose faster than the ladder. T-Ruffle shadowed her, still babbling about not letting the man near the milk, while CB followed Bunnynose's original path. The metal clanged beneath Amphibian Queen's shoes. Taking the steps two at a time, she shot to the catwalk and ran forward. She noticed that Spike's guys were spread out below, watching with the barrels of their guns. Spike caught her eye. He pointed at the closest exit and then to one of his men. They were guarding the exits. She gave him a quick thumbs up. Bunnynose and the intruder sparred back and forth, throwing kicks, punches, knees, and elbows. The man stood a head taller than Bunnynose and outweighed her by at least 80 pounds. His blonde hair almost matched hers, as did his fighting stance. Amphibian Queen took aim at the man's back, Freeze! Instead of putting his hands up, which is what she expected, he grabbed the railing, perched his feet on top, and jumped. In a feat of acrobatics, he swung out and grabbed hold of an adjoining catwalk, pulling himself up like a gymnast. Bunnynose looked like she wanted to follow suit, but Spike pulled his trigger and a grappling hook sprayed out from his gun, wrapping itself around the railing right in front of the intruder. Spike ran forward and jumped, the line reeling him up. Despite the dire circumstances, Amphibian Queen rolled her eyes. Boys and their toys. She glanced at Bunnynose, but her partner was staring at the weapon with envy. T-Ruffle, who finally reached the top of the stairs, cried out, "Keep him away from the other side of the vat, and don't shoot, things are flammable." Amphibian Queen silently cursed the man for giving the saboteur a roadmap to the best way to wreak havoc. The intruder smiled, a strangely sinister look on an otherwise handsome face. He leapt over the grappling line and kept running. Spike got there a moment later, hauling himself onto the catwalk. He sprinted after the intruder, a grin of pleasure on his face. "Don't let him over there!" T-Ruffle squealed again. Amphibian Queen rounded on the man, her gun only mostly pointing at the air beside his head. "You stay here." T-Ruffle swallowed, his eyes wide. Still his stubborn devotion to the milk opened his mouth. "He will ruin it." "I got that the first couple of times." Amphibian Queen shoved past him and bolted down the stairs. "Just stay here while we take care of this." "But we can close the vat." She stopped as her feet hit the concrete floor. Taking a breath, she ground her teeth together. "Where?" T-Ruffle pointed, his hand shaking. "There, that control panel." Amphibian Queen's gaze followed the gesture, and her eyes caught sight of the raised, button-filled console across the space. Backtracking from it, she groaned. It stood 2 catwalks and 1 vat away, with only a skinny conveyor belt that she might be able to reach connecting them. "You can go up over there," T-Ruffle said, changing the direction of his gesture and pointing at yet more stairs. The players of their deadly game began to converge. Spike caught the intruder about 10 feet short of the open vat, and the 2 men started grappling on the metal walkway. CB and a few goons followed underneath them, but Bunnynose watched Amphibian Queen from above. "Any ideas?" her partner asked. Amphibian Queen let her lips draw into a wicked smile. Well, if Spike wanted to show off, she could do the same. She double-tapped a button on the back of the handle of her gun. 2 rods sprang up like tiny motorcycle handles on either side. A miniature harpoon and a launcher rose out of the top of the barrel. She knew, from experience, that it would penetrate the outside of an armored vehicle. Bunnynose sighed. "I'll go distract him." Her tone sounded more like, "You get to do all of the fun stuff." "Do not let him near the vat!" T-Ruffle cried, yet again, from above. Amphibian Queen wondered if she could accidentally toss the man into a vat. Before she could think about it too much, she glanced at the ceiling. There was a lot of stuff between her position and the rafters. "Don't you dare hit anything up there," T-Ruffle chided. "One nick of a pipe will ruin everything we have in production." Amphibian Queen closed an eye and took aim. Sure, it was tight, but not impossible. "Not a problem," she said. After taking a second to check for internal breezes, she pressed the button on her gun again, and the needle-sized harpoon shot into the air. It passed through an opening so small she wouldn't have been able to get her arm through it, before embedding itself in a ceiling girder with a soft thwang. She took a few steps and jumped as the hair-thin cable started to reel her in. The little handlebars didn't exactly provide the best grip for riding up 2 stories, but she held on. Meanwhile, Bunnynose bolted for the nearest stairs and bounded farther up, toward where the intruder and Spike were still slugging it out, the 2 of them inching toward the open vat. Amphibian Queen started to swing, so she could get to the catwalk. The spot where the cable connected to her gun creaked. Strictly speaking, the little grappling hook would support her weight, but not much more, and swinging back and forth was not advised. But that had never stopped her. She rose to the height of the railing, readjusted her hands, her left one protesting after the airbag assault, and reached out, brushing the cold metal of the rail with her fingers. Before she could get a good grip, she felt herself moving away. Using all her might, she flung her free hand up so she could grip the gun again. She got to the apex of the other side of her swing and pumped her legs. The gun jerked in her hand and the metal twisted under the strain. "Come on," she said, trying to ignore how far below the floor was. "Just a little more." She swung back, preparing herself for the maneuver. As if willing the railing to come closer, she stared at it, totally focused on the spot she would grab. Like a trapeze artist, she waited until coming to the top of her arc, but a moment before she let go, the mechanism inside the barrel snapped. Her fingers parted, leaving the gun behind, and she felt herself flying, lighter than air. However, the metal and concrete below her served as a stark reminder that falling would not be good. She kicked her legs back and spread her hands out, reaching for the railing. Time stopped. Someone called her name, but it sounded garbled. She held her breath, as if having just a little more oxygen in her lungs might keep her buoyant longer. The catwalk came closer. Amphibian Queen fell. She fell until her hands smacked into the railing. Gripping for all she was worth, she gritted her teeth as her legs succumbed to gravity, and she got pulled down, her chest hitting the edge of the catwalk with a hollow thump. That was going to leave a mark. Time restarted. Yelling filled the air, but Amphibian Queen couldn't make out the words. Not that it mattered. She scrambled up and crawled over the bar. The control panel stood just a few feet away. She went to it and stopped. Which button? There were more than a dozen, and none of them had helpful pictures or even sticker labels. She looked around, then back at T-Ruffle. He was waving his arms over his head and jumping up and down like she was about to score the winning basket of a championship game. She could see his lips moving. "The red one?" she shouted. T-Ruffle shook his head. "No, the yellow one, on the bottom." The yellow one looked more like a dirt smear, but she pushed it. The waterfall of milk had decreased to a trickle. The whine of an engine started, and the lid of the vat began to close. Her eyes then turned to find Bunnynose and the intruder fighting. Again. A few feet away, Spike was getting to his feet, shaking his head. The intruder managed to push Bunnynose away and draw a metal object the size of a golf ball from his pocket. The overhead lights caused it to sparkle. "Bunnynose!" Amphibian Queen yelled. Her partner didn't need the warning. She was already there, grabbing the man by the shoulder and wrestling him back. But somehow he got out of the hold. Again. He grabbed Bunnynose and pushed her up against the railing. She punched him with one hand and clawed her way across his chest toward the ball still clenched in his fingers with the other. In a split second, she had the tiny orb. With a roar of rage, the intruder tossed her. Not a small toss, but a huge, Herculean effort that had Bunnynose's legs flying over her head and right off the catwalk. It looked like she might catch the edge, but the intruder kicked her hard in the ribs and she traveled out and away. Instead of a graceful landing, Bunnynose hit the side of a conveyor belt hard as she fell. Her fingers fought for a good grip, but the railing was tiny and covered in wire. CB was running past Spike, who had finally gotten to his feet. Neither of them were in a good position to help. The intruder reached into his jacket and pulled out another orb. Amphibian Queen let years of training take over. She quickly assessed what was behind the man. There were no open vats in that direction, and the nearby fans in the wall should suck whatever might be in the projectile outside. Shooting a target the size of a golf ball out of a man's hand might have been a problem for someone else, but this is what Amphibian Queen did. She anticipated the arc of the man's arm, got slightly ahead of it, exhaled, and shot. T-Ruffle shrieked. The intruder jerked his hand away as the orb exploded, and the bits and pieces of it got sucked into the fans. It looked like she'd hit a finger as well. Served him right. "Nice shot," Bunnynose said. Amphibian Queen swiveled her head just in time to see her partner give the world in general a dirty glare, as her grip failed and she slipped off her precarious perch. Bunnynose landed in a vat with a splash, followed quickly by the thunk of a body hitting the metal bottom.